Before taking this class, I knew it was important to know about all the different cultures to help all students feel included and welcomed in the classroom. I also felt like there was more than enough time to cover the topics in the class. I did not know how complex this class would actually be. After taking the class, I had a better idea and understanding of how I can become a better educator. I learned a lot about what I can include in my classroom to help my students learn in a good and safe environment. Especially when it comes to different cultures, I understand a lot better than I did before. My vision for critical multicultural education is to use educational approaches that are culturally compatible with the students' backgrounds and differences. In this class, I learned many different approaches that I will plan on using in the future. It is important as a former educator to use the different approaches because no student is the same. I enjoyed the voice project because it gave me a greater understanding of students' differences. I had to do a lot of research on not only my voice, but my peers' voices. It taught me a lot about the different struggles different people had to face throughout the education. And for the future, I will know and understand. When we talked about race and ethnicity, I enjoyed figuring out what to say in the different scenarios that were given. For example, a Jewish parent said last year, our daughter asked me if we could have a Christmas tree and just not use it. The scenario might be one that might be faced as a future educator, and we should be all aware of what we should say back. I learned that it is important to not assume a student's gender by the way they look. For your classroom, you can write all the students' names on a name tag and then have them write the appropriate pronoun that they would like to be called by. This sets a safe environment for all students. For the group lesson plan, I talked and learned about sexual orientation in education. This topic was very hard to talk about, and it is important to not assume a student's sexual orientation and be aware of what happens in your classroom. Bullying is a huge problem when it comes to sexual orientation and can cause students to do poor in school. A change we should make in school to ensure that all students could be successful is to create equality. Children who are from lower income areas are more likely to fail. It is important to have similar resources in higher and low income areas to create equal opportunities. When we talked about geography, I learned that where you live has a huge influence on how well your education is. There are certain states that have many minorities located at that certain area, which causes them to do poorly at school because they do not have the right resources to help them succeed. When it comes to multicultural teaching, it helps us learn about ourselves as educators and our students, to examine what we teach and how we teach it, so that students can receive the highest form of education. Diversity is very important and cannot be ignored. It helps engage your students when learning more about different cultures. As a teacher, I realize that it is important to give my students rewards when they continue to have good behavior. These students can have some sort of free time at the end of the day to maintain their good behavior. This creates order and a more enjoyable environment for the students. When we did the language unit, we played a game called charades. That taught me how difficult it would be not to be able to communicate with the dominant language that is presented in the classroom. I learned that it is important to be aware of these issues and they cannot be ignored in the classroom. For the reflections, I learned a lot about myself and on other cultures. The out-of-the-box experience put me outside my comfort zone and influenced me to make changes in my life. This assignment had a huge impact on me and on my life. I will always remember this assignment. Should teachers address issues of oppression, privilege, and power? Teachers in all different levels of school should all have their own ways to manage order with their students. For example, it is good for teachers to have themselves and their students to have an enjoyable time in the classroom, and that is a good way to understand if there's power and manage correctly. Some things that I can do as a teacher that can help the needs of all my students is to include everyone's culture by teaching them about each one. Multicultural teaching is a good way to meet the needs of all my students and will have a positive effect on them in the future. Religion is a topic that is hard to talk about in the classroom. It is important not to talk about everyone's religion in the public education system because it can be offensive to students. But when holidays come around, it is important that all decorations should be present for all different religions in the classroom. When teaching in a classroom, you must be able to teach to everyone's learning levels. You must adjust your teaching techniques depending on the child. If the child is advanced or if the child is slower, you must be able to explain concepts in both. It is important to make sure everyone's on the same page. When we did the Monopoly game in the class, I learned a lot about social classes and how they are not equal in the education system. Social classes are not equal in general, but in the education system, you have to watch out because different classes might be advantaged. Some key concepts that I will remember in this class is race and ethnicity, immigration, microaggressions, intergroup dialogue, discrimination in education, and critical race theory. These all were new ones I learned throughout the class and always remember. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone because before this class I was unsure about being an education major, and this class has really changed me and really changed my perspective on education, and I'm really excited to continue to learn more things about Marist and education.